This has been seen on Rumble first, so if you want to make sure you get the early access, go ahead and check out Rumble. But if not, we're going to be getting into today's topic right now. So guys, welcome as we are back as we go into engine upgrade, as it's time to look at a brand new upgraded archetype. So I would say brand new archetype, but it's been around for a while and I've played this deck, as it's time to look at Tri-Brigade and seeing the power they've actually been given, and to talk about how this deck has now improved itself as its engine has truly been upgraded. So that's no joke. But remember, if you're watching this on the early access, remember you could check this out on Rumble early access. They have it before you guys will get it on YouTube. So go ahead and check out the Rumble channel and also check out the Instagram. Remember to follow, remember to join up. And we are getting into it today, as we're going to be diving straight into it as we look at the monsters. And we're going to be looking at the first card that we're going to be talking about, which isn't a monster, actually a spell, as we look at the two cards of the support. And the first one's going to be Tri-Brigade Hammer. So Tri-Brigade Hammer is a quick play spell that you can only activate one of these effects, but you can only use each effect of Tri-Brigade Hammer once per turn. So first, you get to add a Tri-Brigade spell or trap from your deck to your hand, except Tri-Brigade Hammer. Pretty cool. And then the second effect allows you to banish any number of Tri-Brigade cards from your graveyard and special summon one Tri-Brigade Link monster from your extra deck with Link ratings equal to the number banished, ignoring its summoning conditions. Also, you cannot special summon from the extra deck for the rest of this turn except Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monsters. So very cool. Additionally, we have the Link monster, which was released as beside it. As we look at Tri-Brigade Arms Mouser, this card is a somewhat, not generic, but generic to the Tri-Brigade typing, meaning it needs two Beast Warrior, and or Winged Beast monsters to make it. And then if this card is Link summoned, you can send two Tri-Brigade cards with different names from your deck and or extra deck to the graveyard, except Tri-Brigade Arms Mouser. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn, except Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast monsters. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one face-up monster on the field, change it to face-down defense position. You can only use each effect of Tri-Brigade Arms Mouser once per turn. Now, we're going to be talking about it, but let's get one of the elephants out of the way of what the support is designed to fix. There's a monster that has not been able to be summoned properly in Tri-Brigade for a long time without a lot of work, and we're finally going to talk about why these two cards support that. That being Tri-Brigade Arms, Bucephalus II. Now, this monster has always had trouble being summoned because of its ability of not being able to be special summoned from the extra deck unless you have 3 or more Tri-Brigade spells / traps in your graveyard. This was an extremely difficult thing to achieve in Tri-Brigade when Bucephalus was actually created, for a few reasons. The main reason was Tri-Brigade does not actually utilize a lot of its spells and traps. Now, you can argue that it can, and it does, but the point is it doesn't really have the ability to get 3 into the graveyard, because usually with the spells and traps you're trying to get through your combo, or just Tri-Brigade Revolt at most, and maybe sometimes stuff like Tri-Brigade Oath as a disruption against your opponent. But the point is, the Bucephalus was very hard to summon because the remaining spells and traps were not the best. So this was always a monster that many people would have loved to summon in actual Tri-Brigade, but it was never regulated for that purpose and only really used for its ability to send more cards from the extra deck when it's sent to the graveyard. So this was one of the reasons why I have stuff like Nadir Servant. However, due to Hammer and Mouser, this has become effectively done in the fact of Hammer being able to gain you access to more spells and traps. And additionally, Mouser as well can then get you the ability to dump 2 more if you really want to, in the form of any of your spells and traps. So you could dump like 2 different spells or traps to the graveyard, and now you have 3 in rotation, which means Bucephalus is now online to be summoned from the extra deck. I do think that that's pretty straightforward for what they're trying to do for the engine, as now you have access to getting into your actual in-theme boss monster, which they were trying to make this Link 5, and now it's a little bit easier to do. On top of that, Mouser is still a good card to send to the graveyard because it has the ability to book stuff face down, and Hammer also has the ability to summon monsters by banishing Tri-Brigade cards instead of just the monsters, which I think is really cool because this can get you your spells and traps that are now in the graveyard that weren't really recyclable. You get rid of them to summon more monsters, so I think that's a really cool addition. But when we look at the roster of the Tri-Brigade spells and traps, you see what the problem is. A lot of them are not like horrible, but they're not that good, to be honest. The only one I really saw there could be usage for is maybe Tri-Brigade Roar, but they specifically designed this card with some really weird kind of conditioning, so the card isn't as good as it could have been, but it's whatever. A lot of the other Tri-Brigade cards, you can still run them. They're not terrible. You have to decide. But pretty much on top of it, the two that really stick out for being useful is like Rendezvous and Oath, because Rendezvous and Oath both have graveyard effects. Rendezvous does give you additional attack, so it's not the worst card to have in your deck if you have to use it. And then Oath's ability is just pretty decent, so it is kind of an up to you thing. But the point is, the engine has been accelerated a lot because now Tri-Brigade has access to another Link 2 that does some good plays by sending you even more. So this allows you to access your monsters, which is something I haven't mentioned yet. And additionally, Hammer, like I said, fixes a big issue in the deck, now meaning that a card like Bear Brum in the deck does not have to be the only card that searches for spells and traps. Hammer now can fulfill that role, as running 3 Hammer might actually not be that bad of an option, considering the Hammer actually serves as an additional Revolt. So it's pretty cool, I think, in that regard. It does allow you to use your kind of this additional like spell as another way to fix the problem. So like if for whatever reason you get stopped or they stop your Revolt, you can then go ahead and use Hammer and 2, and it's really cool. So I do like that as an additional thing. But also we're going to be talking about some of the problems. So we were talking about the missing support, which is kind of the key, because I do think that if we look at this archetype, there are some weaknesses the deck still possesses, and I wish future support might address this later on. So we're wondering what could be it? What's the problem here? First, they're missing a Link 1. I think that a Link 1 definitely for the support was needed, because they need a Link 1 that just does something. It doesn't have to be the greatest card ever. Like if it just... what I'm thinking is something that basically, like maybe Monster Reborn's a Tri-Brigade monster specifically. And I mean, like, I know some of the other monsters do it, but I mean, a Link 1 that locks you into just summoning Tri-Brigade monsters actually isn't that bad if that's what it does. It can just be a vanilla Link 1 almost too, because it just needs to exist as a good name to get into, or another monster. So they need a Link 1. They don't need a broken one, but they could have one that's okay. Additionally, a monster that searches for spells on summon would be really nice. And the reason why is that if a monster could search for it on summon, which means it searches for Hammer, you now have the ability to have like a monster in the main deck that could at least start netting combo pieces. Because I think Tri-Brigade's biggest weakness is it's kind of revolving around the one card a combo with Fractal, and I think this deck definitely needs more ways to access its combo more, or access cards. So giving a monster that searches spells, at least to search for Hammer, does help out a lot, because now Hammer could then search out anything else. So now you have like more linear card combos. It doesn't have to be one card, but Hammer does accelerate the plays a lot on the combos. But also one thing that definitely needs to happen is the deck just needs a generic draw 1, because a lot of the card effects let you put cards back on the bottom of your deck when you draw, so you're not really netting +1s. We just need a draw card that just says you just draw a single card, nothing else, and that's like it. Like maybe the Link 1 could have that effect, and then you're like, well, why is that good, Brad? Well, the point is, if you have all the recycling effects, this means you're not going down in card economy if you at least draw a single card with no conditional drawback to put cards back on the bottom of your deck. This means that every time you would then continue to do your plays, you're then putting cards back underneath and then drawing a card, but simultaneously that card is now going underneath your deck. It's becoming that draw 1 for you, and then now if you're not getting any additional advantage, you're just replacing cards from your hand back underneath. So it reduces the ability of the deck to run non-engine, which unfortunately in the modern day of Yu-Gi-Oh! You need to do that. However, if you have just a draw 1, that card can be anything you want. It at least means that if you drew something good, you can cycle the cards out of your hand to the bottom of the deck with the other effects, meaning that you're not really losing anything and you'll still be one step up. I think it's a really good thing to have, and I think they should do that considering there's a lot of discard effects in the Tri-Brigade monsters. But guys, that's going to be it for today. We just went over briefly the upgraded power of the Tri-Brigade deck. Now, I will say this, if you're to splash this in strategies, I think that this isn't bad. I think that it's going to wait for more support thanks to the Chronicle deck that will be coming out. So if I had to be honest, I think this is where the deck is going to stay for a little while, kind of be focusing on that. So it doesn't mean that the deck is bad. It just means that in order for the deck to get stronger, you're going to have to wait for more support. And I think if the Chronicle deck gives them a good Tri-Brigade card, I think some of this stuff I mentioned in the end could be addressed here. But guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, early access on Rumble is going to be starting, so some videos will only be able to be seen first on Rumble besides being exclusives. and you will be able to see these earlier before they're on YouTube. So as always, this has been Brad from the Ed Army signing off, and for all of you out there, to sign on.